Julius Caesar, Act 4. Multiple choice questions. Who forms the second triumvirate in Act 4? Brutus, Cassius, and Octavius. Antony, Lepidus, and Octavius. Brutus, Antony, and Caesar. Cassius, Caesar, and Antony. Antony, Lepidus, and Octavius. In Act 4, who accuses Brutus of having wronged him? Antony, Octavius, Cassius, Caesar's ghost. Cassius. What does Brutus accuse Cassius of in Act 4? Cowardice, murder, greed and corruption, betrayal. Greed and corruption. Where does the confrontation between Brutus and Cassius take place? In the Senate. In Caesar's house. In Brutus' tent. At the Forum. In Brutus' tent. What does the ghost of Caesar tell Brutus in Act 4? Beware the Ides of March. I will meet you at Philippi. You are my son. Cassius will betray you. I will meet you at Philippi. Who suggests that Lepidus is unworthy of being part of the triumvirate? Brutus, Cassius, Antony, Octavius. Antony. How does Cassius react when Brutus accuses him of taking bribes? He admits it. He denies it and becomes angry. He ignores the accusation. He apologizes. He denies it and becomes angry. Which battle are Brutus and Cassius preparing for in Act 4? The Battle of Philippi. The Battle of Rome. The Battle of Pompeii. The Battle of Syracuse. The Battle of Philippi. Who says, strike as thou didst at Caesar, for I know when thou didst hate him worst, thou lovedst him better than ever thou lovedst Cassius. Antony, Cassius, Octavius, Caesar's ghost. Cassius. How does Brutus say Portia died? By falling ill. By swallowing hot coals. She was murdered. In battle. By swallowing hot coals. Why does Brutus criticize Cassius in Act 4? For not supporting his leadership. For withholding funds needed for their army. For siding with Antony. For assassinating Caesar. For withholding funds needed for their army. What does Antony say about Lepidus in Act 4? He is an honorable man. He is like a horse, useful but not a leader. He is a great warrior. He should lead the army. He is like a horse, useful but not a leader. How does the relationship between Brutus and Cassius evolve in Act 4? It remains tense and hostile. It grows stronger after they reconcile. They plot against each other. They remain neutral to each other. It grows stronger after they reconcile. What does the ghost of Caesar represent to Brutus? His guilt and fear. His confidence in winning the battle. A sign of divine protection. The people's support. His guilt and fear. Why does Cassius refuse to argue in front of their armies? To avoid weakening morale. Because he fears Brutus. To avoid public humiliation. To prevent Antony from finding out. To avoid weakening morale. What event deepens the conflict between Brutus and Cassius? The assassination of Caesar. The death of Portia. Cassius' refusal to provide funds. Their opposing military strategies. Cassius' refusal to provide funds. Why does Brutus not want to wait for Antony and Octavius' army to come to them? He fears their army will grow stronger. He doesn't trust Cassius' leadership. He wants to catch them by surprise. He believes they can't win. He fears their army will grow stronger. What is Brutus' reasoning for going to Philippi? He wants to avoid a civil war in Rome. Their forces will lose strength if they wait. He wants to avenge Caesar's death. He wants to fight Octavius away from Rome. Their forces will lose strength if they wait. What does Antony think of Lepidus in Act 4? He sees him as an equal leader. He believes he is only useful as a subordinate. He thinks Lepidus is the strongest among them. He wants to make Lepidus the ruler of Rome. He believes he is only useful as a subordinate. What does Brutus imply by telling Cassius, "I did send to you for gold to pay my legions, which you denied me"? Cassius is betraying him. Cassius is greedy. Cassius does not care about their cause. Cassius is dishonest. Cassius is betraying him. What strategic disagreement do Brutus and Cassius have in Act 4 about their upcoming battle against Antony and Octavius? Whether to attack at night or during the day. Whether to wait for their enemies or march to meet them. Whether to include Lepidus in their plans. Whether to split their forces or stay united. Whether to wait for their enemies or march to meet them. What underlying theme is reflected in the argument between Brutus and Cassius in Act 4? Power and corruption. The fragility of friendship. Honor and betrayal. Fate versus free will. Honor and betrayal. In Act 4, how does Brutus show his stoicism? He refuses to show emotions when discussing Portia's death. He declines to join the conspiracy. He shows no concern for the outcome of the battle. He lets Cassius take the lead in military strategy. He refuses to show emotions when discussing Portia's death. What does the ghost of Caesar symbolize in Act 4? Revenge and justice. Guilt and impending doom. Forgiveness and peace. Victory and triumph. Guilt and impending doom. Why does Antony describe Lepidus as a slight unmeritable man? He sees Lepidus as weak and unimportant. He is envious of Lepidus' popularity. He believes Lepidus is a threat to Octavius. He wants Lepidus to leave the Triumvirate. He sees Lepidus as weak and unimportant. What is Brutus' reaction to the death of his wife Portia? He mourns her deeply. He hides his grief and remains focused on the war. He blames Cassius for her death. He abandons the cause. He hides his grief and remains focused on the war. What reason does Antony give for not trusting Lepidus? He has no political experience. He is unworthy and inexperienced. He is likely to betray them. He is too loyal to Caesar. He is unworthy and inexperienced. How does Cassius display a lack of conviction in Act 4? By admitting his corruption. By doubting their military strategy. By agreeing to Brutus' decision to march to Philippi. By questioning Brutus' leadership. By agreeing to Brutus' decision to march to Philippi. How does the argument between Brutus and Cassius reflect their personal flaws? Brutus' stubbornness and Cassius' greed. Cassius' cowardice and Brutus' pride. Brutus' anger and Cassius' jealousy. Both their desire for absolute power. Brutus' stubbornness and Cassius' greed. What foreshadows Brutus' death in Act 4? The ghost's appearance. Cassius' betrayal. Antony's speech. Octavius' power. The ghost's appearance.